Watch the water, boy. The king is breathing. The little boy perched on his grandfather's shoulders, staring wide-eyed in anticipation. This was his first time. His grandfather stood on the bank of the river Mekong. The moon was bright, the sky full of stars, and a warm breeze carried the pleasant smell of the lotus blossoms. The young boy could hear the hushed whispers of the other villagers. All had gathered on the banks, but unwilling to look away from the water, the young boy remained transfixed. Deep beneath the silt and the swirling currents, in a palace of crystalline scales and emerald light, the Faya stirred, the Naga King. A creature of ancient power, he dwelled in the underwater city of Badon, the protector of the mighty river and its people. The Naga King stirred, his body as thick as a temple pillar and shimmering with the colors of sunset, golden and resplendent, a powerful cobra. Tonight was the night of Wanok Fansa. The Naga King remembered the Buddha's descent from heaven on a ladder of jewels, and as a guardian of the faith, the serpent could not let the master return to a world of darkness. With a slow, rhythmic coil of its tail, the Naga began his ascent. As he rose, he gathered the spiritual energy of the river, compressing it within his throat. He didn't use teeth or venom. He used devotion. Near the surface, he exhaled. The young boy felt water mist on his face. A sphere of glowing crimson light, smooth as a pearl and hot as a coal, broke the surface of the Mekong. It didn't pop or crackle. It soared. The crowd on the shores let out a collective gasp. Fayanuk! As the red orb climbed towards the stars, trailing no smoke, leaving only a shimmering reflection on the ripples. The river glowed with each fireball from deep within. Another followed, beautiful and bright, then 3 more, a rhythmic pulse of silent fire rising from the depths. His grandfather held his hand. He whispered, "The Naga King." As the young boy watched in amazement as the final fireball vanished into the dark sky, he whispered, "Thank you," and bowed his head softly. The waters became dark and still again, and the young boy thought he could see the golden scales of the Fayanuk swirling softly away to his kingdom below. Welcome to Rebel Road. I'm Mary.
And I'm Haley. It is such a joy to have you listening along with us today. Thank you for that. We really do appreciate all of the listeners and subscribers. I just want to ask all of you again before we get started today, if you haven't done so, would you please hit that subscribe button? It only takes a second, and that 5-star review. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, either one, we would really appreciate it. So how's everyone doing today? Are we holding up? Are we ready to learn about another wild and crazy cryptid? But wait, Mary, is it a cryptid or is it maybe a god? I don't know. What is it?
Well, the Nagas, they're tricky. And I'd say a cryptid, but they also have that older mythological side to them. So maybe demigods. And our opening story, before we get too far along, is based off of a true event that happens every year. In October in Nong Khai, Thailand, they celebrate the Naga Fireball Festival. And it always occurs on the full moon every October in the Nong Khai province along the Mekong River border with Laos. Glowing red fireballs, varying in size, rise silently from the water and shoot into the sky. They actually do this. And usually they start just after sunset and it lasts for several minutes. And you can see anywhere from like a dozen of these fireballs to up to 100. It varies every year. And the scientific community, they remain super baffled by this. Most science says that it's just the releasing of natural gases from deep within the river, but they can't account for the clockwork timing of those gases. And there's this theory that it's a plasma orb that's coming up to the surface. And some skeptics, they say that it's some type of a man-made underwater flare that somebody just, goes down in the river and shoots up every year. But this phenomenon has been happening for centuries. So that doesn't seem logical at all. And it became a tourist event sometime in the 1990s, and it's just grown in popularity. In the locals, they actually get offended when science comes in and tries to explain the phenomenon as anything but the signs of the Naga. They see it as an absolute attack on their beliefs. And this festival is what brought me to the Nagas. And so I decided to dig into what the locals were saying was the cause of these fireballs.
So you can actually go and experience this yourself. Like you can see it with your own eyes.
Yep, how fun would that be?
I mean, I think that would be a lot of fun, super fun. But I don't know, Mary, is this a supernatural weird podcast or are we starting to talk about exotic travel destinations? Are we
Well,
going with that as our podcast?
I know, that's a fun idea. A travel agency specifically geared towards weird and unknown phenomenon, structures, and creatures. I think we just may have found a new side career and hustle, Haley. I don't know.
Well, I mean, also you're a great storyteller. You did a great job in that opening. So add that to the resume as well. Definitely sign me up for a Bhutan. But anyways, back to those lights and the Naga King. What is the legend?
Well, the locals believe that the fireballs are the actual breath of the Naga as it awakens and surfaces to mark the end of the rainy season retreat. And the legend holds that the Buddha spends 3 months in heavens teaching his mother and other deities. And he returns to earth at the end of the Buddhist Lent. And so, to honor his return, the Naga and his followers release these glowing orbs as a grand gesture of reverence to the Buddha.
So are Nagas, are they half human, half serpent, or are they just really big snakes?
Mostly they're depicted as giant cobras, but these cobras usually have multiple heads. And so we saw that with Shisha or Aneta, and that's that giant cobra god that Vishnu reclines on. And Shisha is a demigod and the king of the Nagas in Hindu tradition, where the Fayanuk is the king of the Nagas in Buddhist tradition. Now, they can appear as half human or half serpent form when interacting with humans if they want to default to that. But most of the time, they are just one big serpent, nothing hybrid about them. But it seems that if they retain the hybrid shape, they do so when they're serving as guardians for treasure or water or spiritual sites.
So I'm going to ask, are there female Nagas? For example, would Medusa be a Naga?
Well, a female Naga is actually called a Nagini.
Oh, well, that's in Harry Potter.
Right, like in Harry Potter, Voldemort's snake. And she was plucked from these old legends. And interestingly, though, Nagini in Harry Potter was just a big snake. Real Nagini are often depicted with a human torso and snake tail almost exclusively. Or they're fully human with a lot of serpent imagery, like they'll have a serpent around them or something like that. And they're always beautiful women, like super sexy women, very seductive, and it's said that they can shapeshift from human to serpent, or they can just stay in that hybrid form. And some famous Nagini would be Manassa. She's worshipped to prevent and cure snake bites, and she's often depicted surrounded by snakes or on a lotus. Ulipi is the daughter of the Naga King. And then we have a Padmavati. She's the Naga Queen, and she's associated with water, fertility, and guarding treasures in the underworld. Now, she's considered a powerful, sacred figure, but not a demon. And so when we circle back to Medusa, she's not a Nagini. She would be a Gorgon. And maybe we can do a road snack on our gal Medusa. She's got some things going on with her. But she was originally a beautiful mortal priestess. And so she was not born of Naga.
Well, I would love to do an episode on Medusa. And a little side note, Medusa is the logo for the brand Versace. I just, in case any of our listeners want to check into that. I think of a half snake, and she, of course, is the first thing I think of. So go ahead, put her in the rotation somewhere, Mary.
Yeah, I'll just add her in somewhere.
Yes. All right. So back to the born Nagas or the Nagini. You said the queen Padmavati also guarded treasures in the netherworld. I don't know about you, but I hear large serpent guardian treasures or large serpents living underwater. And I kind of jump to the idea of an Asian dragon. So are Nagas related to dragons in some ways?
Actually, yes. In many Asian cultures, the word dragon and naga are used interchangeably to describe mythical water dwelling serpentine creatures. And do you remember our New Year's road snack and the dragon stopping to help the other animals and villagers? Well, nagas are protectors and guardians of sacred places like rivers, lakes, and oceans, and they're often viewed as benevolent. So you could link the two. The Asian idea of a dragon and the Naga, absolutely.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned our New Year's road snack. It is still one of my favorites that we've done so far. But, I just love that. And we think about the Fireball Festival and a dragon. And you got to say, it is 100% the breath of a Naga, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's not gas bubbling up. No way. There's no way that that could be like every year on this day under the full moon, right after sunset. The gas, nature says, oh, let's release the gas. There's no way.
Yeah, I love dragons when we're talking about them. Mary, every episode we end up digging in and talking about all the different rabbit holes and then we come up with all these other ideas for more episodes. I got to give you a hard time. But the Naga is just found in Asia. It seems to be where they originate from, right? And if we're saying an Asian idea of a dragon, it's not a winged dragon. Those are more Western and very different. And Nagas don't fly, do they?
No, they don't fly. So that's a bit of a distinction from our idea of a dragon here in the Western world. In fact, Nagas are known to be in a feud with the Garuda. And so those are a divine bird like creature that fly. And the Nagas live underground or underwater. And before you ask, a Garuda is the king of birds, and he's sometimes called a phoenix. And so maybe we can do an episode on them someday. But I kind of found that interesting because nature, birds and snakes are enemies. Snakes slither and they get into the birds' nests and they eat their eggs, and birds swoop down and eat the snakes. So it's just kind of a weird side note that I found, and I just love those. But to get back to your other question about the Nagas outside of Asiatic culture, there are some. In Greek culture, we have the Hydra and the Echidna.
So, echidna. I thought that was an adorable little spiny anteater in Australia.
Well, yeah, they are adorable, but the echidna that we're talking about is called the mother of all monsters in Greek mythology. So, most definitely not that little adorable porcupine looking critter. The echidna also has unknown origins and they're wildly debated, but she was this beautiful half maiden and half fearsome snake, and she was a goddess known as a flesh eating monster. And she and her mate Typhoon, who was 100-headed storm giant, I don't know how that works, but they produced fearsome creatures, the Hydra being one, along with Cerberus, the dog of the underworld, the Sphinx, and dragons. So we could camp on her for a long time. But do you know the mermaid logo in Starbucks with that double tail that like split?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are stone statues of Echidna depicting her with a split two serpent body, but then other depictions she just has one serpent body, and I just kind of found that wild because one of her debated parent groups are sea deities.
Well, again, I think there you go. Another topic for another episode mermaids. That is interesting because Nagas live underwater a lot in tradition. And a mermaid kind of is like a snake, maybe. I don't know. But then you said that she gave birth to the Hydra. And well, the Hydra, that's a water serpent, right?
Right.
Yeah. And the Hydra, it had multiple heads, like 9 of them. And the thing with the Hydra was if you cut one off, then 2 more would grow back. Hercules is the one that killed the Hydra using its own blood. And the Hydra's blood was so poisonous that it would kill you, and its breath was also poisonous. Hercules learned real fast to stop chopping its heads off because they kept multiplying. Hercules dipped an arrow in its blood and shot it, and that is what killed it.
So obviously, you know a little something about the Hydra, Haley.
Maybe a little, just a little. Well, I do. We really like Greek mythology around here in this house. And I didn't really even think about it being a Naga. It's so fun how these myths all link back together. And I mean, come on, who wasn't obsessed with the tales of Hercules?
You're right. You know, you gotta love a handsome mortal demigod who fights evil for the people.
I mean, yeah, you just gotta love them. Okay, so are there any other Naga type creatures we may have not made a connection with?
Well, I think others that might have a chance are a little slim, but let's go ahead and look at a few. In the Mayan culture, they have a lot of serpent imagery with their gods. Theories suggest connections between Asian Nagas and Mesoamerican serpent deities, noting similarities in their roles as guardians, fertility symbols, and associations with the underworld. Some researchers propose that the Maya lowlands referred to as Nakahasti, and it may be a derivative of Nagaasti. So that's the Western Nagaland from Sanskrit. So that links the two cultures. And so Maya deities like the feathered serpent, Kukulkan, represents the guardianship of natural elements. Kukulkan, though, he flew. So that ends the similarity right there with the Naga.
I always get a little confused. Were Mayan before the Aztecs? I know I'm a little off topic, but what's new?
Well, the Mayan were first. They were there centuries earlier, and their myths are so much older. And so the two were distinctly different, the Aztecs and the Mayans. The Aztecs were horribly brutal. Now, both cultures engaged in the ritualistic violence, including human sacrifice and warfare, but the scale and frequency differed, with the Aztecs generally considered more brutal and horrific. And I don't know where that came from, but that just popped out.
Well, you have human sacrifice on the brain, I think,
I think
and
I did.
like many people right now. Mary and I are working on a new type of episode. I just kind of FYI out there for everyone. It's just going to be a one off, maybe every other month or so. And it is a deep dive into a topic that feels very relevant to current events. And for our first episode, we are going to work on blood rituals and child sacrifice, which is sad to say that it is relevant to current events. But Mary has been deep in the rabbit holes and it's going to be intense. We aren't sure when that's going to be coming out because there's just so much to research and document, but hopefully within the next week or two.
Yeah, it'll be a bit longer than our normal full episode, and it will definitely not be suitable for all ages. But let's just get back to the Nagas. You know, let's something happier. We can find a few Egyptian Nihibnau. Now, Nihibnau is an ancient snake deity often depicted emerging from the earth, similarly to how Nagas are associated with the underworld. And then we have all that cobra imagery that's used in Egypt. Nagas guard treasure in Asian lore, and cobras protect pharaohs and represent divine authorities. So, some interpretations suggest that both Indian Nagas and Egyptian serpent figures, like those associated with Thoth, represent a serpent of wisdom cult that spans different ancient cultures. But if you dig deeper into the Egyptian snake or the reptile like beings that are more commonly associated with the specific Egyptian deities versus the full snake or half snake human hybrids, they're probably not that linked, but it's still very interested the association with these Nagas and other cultures, I would say.
And we don't want to forget the bow naga, do we, Mary?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Now, the bone naga They were the most fascinating Nagas I stumbled upon, and I was so excited when I had found them. Let me just read to you about the Bone Naga. So, Bone Nagas are skeletal terrors raised from the remains of magically slain Nagas, or Nagas that were killed but haven't had yet rejuvenated. They are granted unlife through rituals practiced by cultists or Yuanti and morbid spirit Nagas. These undead Nagas possess magical abilities similar to those they had in life, along with an eerie gaze that can be beguiled by other creatures. Bone Nagas typically obey those who resurrect them, serving their creators as timeless guards and sharing the lore that they collected in life. Underneath disrupts the perfect memory Bone Nagas enjoyed while alive, leaving them with gaps in their memories or details scrambled into puzzle like jumbles. In rare cases, Bone Nagas continue to pursue the goals they had while alive instead of serving other creatures. Most free willed Bone Nagas are evil beings raised from spirit Naga remains, but in unusual instances, Bone Nagas created from guardian Nagas continue good, albeit confused, existences. I mean, that's absolutely riveting. And unfortunately, absolutely not a real myth or, not a real old myth from a culture or our legends. To my sleep deprived and research disappointment, the Bone Nagas are a creature from Dungeons and Dragons.
I am still chuckling over that, Mary. I absolutely love it. And just for our listeners, last week, Mary, she sent me a text at like 6 a.m. and was telling me how she was listening to this podcast on Nagas and found this amazing new info that she'd never heard of before. And the podcasters start talking about these different weapons that they needed to kill the Naga. And Mary said she spent 45 minutes listening to this and researching it before she realized that she was listening to a gaming podcast. And when she texted me, I immediately knew that she was talking about Dungeons and Dragons because there are folks in this house that play Dungeons and Dragons. And I just died laughing. So let that be a warning to everyone researching. Definitely check your sources.
I mean, I thought it was funny and I was thoroughly engaged in a Bone Naga, but that podcast did not say it was a gaming podcast. It was like a creature feature or something like that. But a Bone Naga, that sounded terrifying and just up my alley. So I was absolutely gutted when I discovered that it wasn't a real creature. I mean, but yeah. So it's important to verify your sources, folks. Absolutely.
I know you were, Mary. I know. Well, I think that about wraps up our episode on Nagas. And like always, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend or a stranger. Anybody is fine. We don't discriminate, but definitely hit that follow or subscribe button. And please give us a kind worded 5-star review.
That just pushes us up in the algorithm and helps other curious, weird loving friends find us. And don't forget to find us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, where I post different photos so you can visually see some of the things that we're talking about. And sometimes a little nugget we left out in an episode, like Babia, the world's only known vegetarian crocodile who guarded the lake surrounding the Padmaswamy temple that we covered in our last road snack. And I think I said that wrong. Haley, say that for me.
Padmaswamy temple.
Padmaswamy temple. I hope you all practiced that when you were listening to the episode.
And that's the temple that Mary found while researching the Nagas. The Nagas she found while researching the fireball phenomena. And what did you find that takes us to our next road snack, Mary?
Well, we're actually going to be moving away from the Asia region and continuing our quick tour around this weird earth. And we're going to settle down into Peru, where we're going to talk about the Nazca mummies.
Well, I can't wait. I love a good mummy. But until next time, friends, remember to keep it weird and pull it back to Jesus.
Bye.
Bye.